Hello everybody, how's it going? Our lesson today about variable scope. What is variable scope and local variable with global variable? There is something we call it variable scope. For the variable it has a scope, and there is something also called local variable and global variable. So let's go to Visual Studio to figure out together. But before we go to Visual Studio and figure out together, I want to tell you that we still not had enough from the function structure. We still are going to have the array. We're still going to have a lot of examples and homeworks about the function, the procedure, and arrays, and all these beautiful things in the programming in this course and in future courses. So now let's go to Visual Studio, figure out together what is variable scope and local variable versus global variable. All right, we have here a small program, hashtag include the stream, hashtag include string using namespace td. And I defined a procedure here. We have small procedure, void my procedure, I name it, and inside the procedure I define integer data type. I declare a variable and name it x equal 100. I assign 100 the value to the variable x, and after that I print it cout less than. I create text. The value of variable x inside the procedure, this procedure, is, I call the x to print for me the value which is 100. And same here in the main function, I define integer data type. Sorry for the dog sound. All right, there. And here in the main function, I define integer data type. I declare same name variable x equal 200. I assign 200 the value of this number to the x variable that exists inside the main function. And after that, I want to display it on console screen. I use cout object less than the value of variable x inside the main function is x. Here, if I did run, the compiler will print for me or display for me on console screen 200. And here, because I called the name of the procedure my procedure, the compiler will print for me this string with the 100. Now you have to ask yourself a smart question. When you declare a variable, what's happening in memory when you declare a variable, as we take it in a previous course? When you declare a variable, you have variable name, variable value, and the reference, the address. So that's how the compiler distinguish between these two local variables. Why local variables? We'll talk about it in a minute. So the compiler distinguish between these two variables because each variable, it has scope, and that's the title of this lesson, variable scope. What does mean variable scope? Variable scopes mean each variable, it has scope. This variable inside the procedure here up, it has its scope. Its scope, it's finished and expired when the compiler go execute this procedure here in the main function. The compiler go after that to the memory, erase the variable from the memory and make it empty again, which means this x variable inside the procedure, it's end or finish after the compiler execute the procedure. So this x variable, its scope just inside the procedure, and this x variable in the main function is scope inside the main function between these two curly brackets, and the x variable inside the procedure, its scope between these two curly brackets. Once the compiler finish executing this procedure, go to the memory and erase everything from there to make it empty again, and same for the main function. So how the compiler distinguish between these two variables while they have the same name? Compiler distinguish them through their addresses or reference that is created when we declare a variable. So I can have two variables hold the same names. Yes, you can have two variables hold the same names, but they should be in different scope. Like here we have integer x inside the procedure, it has its scope, and here we have integer x inside the main function, it has its scope. You cannot declare another variable same name inside the procedure now because we already have integer x. You cannot create again integer x or declare again integer x, and same in the main function. And both these variables, we call them local variables. The variable inside the procedure, we call it local variable, and the variable inside the main function, we called it local variable. Let's do run first to this program to see the result. As I said, it should give me first 200 and 100. Perfect. The value of the variable x inside the main function is 200, correct? Because first we call the x that exists inside the main function, and after that we call the name of the procedure for that, execute for us the second line of code that exists inside the procedure. The value of variable x inside the procedure is 100. Perfect. So how we can declare a global variable? Here you come up After using namespace, you write or define integer x, for example, equal let's say 5,000 semicolon. So how can you use this global variable after that? You use it by writing this syntax. Let's do a space here, colon colon x semicolon. When we did now colon colon x semicolon and we did run, the compiler will distinguish the global variable from the two local variables that exist in the main function procedure. Perfect. The compiler display for us the first line of code that exists inside the main function. The value of the variable x inside the main function is 200, and after that display for us the second line of code that you put inside the main function, cout less than colon colon x. We said to reach the global variable we have to use the syntax colon colon x and less than end line for the new line, and the x of the global variable, it was stored inside the 5,000, and the compiler after that go to execute the last line of code that exists inside the procedure. The value of the variable x inside the procedure is 100. So how can we modify the value of the global variable? We come here, we write this syntax along colon colon x semicolon, but before we do semicolon equal, for example, it was 5,000, just make it now 400. Now the compiler will print for us the new value that we assign it in the main function for the global variable. Let's to run this program to make sure that it's gonna work. Perfect. The compiler executes for us the new value of the global variable, which is 400. So that was the lesson of variable scope and local variable, global variable. The local variables that exist in the procedure and in the main function, that's we call them local variables, and we cannot declare another variable has the same name in the same scope, and same with the global variable. That was the lesson of today. See you next lesson, guys. Ciao.